This is Wooden Crown, a original character that I created quite a few years ago now that was intended to initially be perhaps a comic of sorts. However, I was asked by a company that are quite well known if I could make a game book featuring this character. And so I went away and was thinking about different things. How could I do this? What would the combat system be? What would the exploration system be? And initially, I really liked the idea of doing something like a choose-your-own-adventure book. So I've got a bunch of different art pieces here of Wooden Crown and of different scenarios and things, and I thought I would walk through them and maybe just give some insight into maybe what I had as ideas for the story or how I created the pieces. So first off, we've got this The Journey Begins type of illustration where Wooden Crown is on his horse and he's starting this adventure. I pictured him as being one of the last of his species, as an adolescent kind of character in that species, with no real parent or parents, in a world of men and, as you can imagine, all sorts of horrible bits and bobs. And so this was the start of his journey. I'm not very good with colour whatsoever. I throw down what I can and see what sticks. For this particular piece, I was going for a kind of old school comic book colouring look, and I think it's quite nice. This one is the first illustration that I ever drew of Wooden Crown. I didn't draw it intending it to be a character. I was just putting down lines and then seeing what happened. The horse itself is photo bashed. I just got a full, I was going to say full frontal there of a horse, which I may or may not have on some devices, but just got a kind of frontal shot of this horse and then added in some armour and things and the rider on the back, etc. The flag, again, I was just laying things down. I've always really liked the look of the skull and crossbones, the traditional like pirate flag. I've always thought that was quite cool. And I wanted to add something a little bit cosmic, so you've got the stars there and just not having a generic skull and crossbones, or what the flag represents, who owns the flag. I haven't got a fucking clue. And in the background, you've got maybe some cathedral ruins or something like that. That's kind of the headspace that I was at the time. One of my favourite ones, again, one of the kind of OG, Wooden Crown in the lair of the Arachnid King. I think I'd put something like that as the title. Lots of black work. In the illustration itself, I tend to do a lot of stamp filter and grain filters to increase the texture. If you zoom in on the Arachnid's face here, you can see where I've added in an additional grain filter or noise filter that was lassoed and then not added in an overall one at the end, where it's kind of lassoed on the creature's head and upwards a little bit. So if you do zoom in, there is an inconsistency with the noise level across the piece. And I always like the idea of Wooden Crown's sword just kind of looking like a shitty wooden sword in a lot of the panels. So you get that in a lot of the art pieces. The sword is literally just two lines intersected. This illustration was initially drawn for a different tabletop role-playing game that I was working on with a friend that didn't really go anywhere, unfortunately, due to different commitments and what have you. But I feel like this character would really fit into the world of Wooden Crown, so I'm just fucking chucking him in there now. I was always obsessed with Coneheads. I'd never even seen the film, but I just saw the covers and some stills. Always thought it was weird, so I kind of wanted a Conehead-esque alien with some kind of velvety head ornament holding some strange effigy. Another one of my favourites, this one. It was intended to be Wooden Crown in some form of maze. I was going to expand on this and have it more of a A4 portrait, and then with the harsh cutout of the cape, have the title of the comic or the game book. This probably would have been, if not the cover to the overall project, it would have been a cover to one of the issues or one of the chapters. This is Wooden Crown in battle with possibly the kind of arch nemesis or main evil character. It would probably be more likely be a villain of a particular chapter, or, and as you can see, Wooden Crown is getting his arse handed to him. The hand here, I'm not 100% on Wooden Crown's hand. The character himself, he hadn't even really been fully fleshed out, even to this day. So things like what his hands were going to be like, I didn't really know. Sometimes they would be a bit more like wooden, Other times they would literally be like a human hand, and other times it would be more skeletal. Probably should work on that. I really like the alligators and crocodiles, and I wanted a bit of a alligator-esque face, or at least jaw. And then he's got his ornate helmet on. I think what I probably will do if I delve further into this is give his appearance even more of a crocodile, fierce predator look. And then last one for this part is Wooden Crown in some Cave of the Ancients. I wanted him to look quite scared here. Again, the character is supposed to be an adolescent. He's not supposed to be some big badass that can take anyone down and anything down. I envision quite a lot of childlike wonder to the character, and with that, of course, comes childlike fear. And in this particular piece, obviously, he's descended down, he's into the cave, we've got tons of skulls and bodies tied up to pikes. And I think that's about it for part one. This will probably be in at least 2, maybe 3 parts, and then I'll just combine them all as well for a longer video. But seeing as I'm not actively doing anything with Wooden Crown, I thought it might be interesting to just do a video where I can discuss what he is. Of course, I didn't actually get round to getting too deep into this project, because that's me. So eventually nothing really came of it, and I've put him on the back burner a little bit at the moment, but I do plan on going back and creating something with this character.